Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is Verity Seeker, and we have a very interesting discussion today concerning the Orthodox Church versus the Roman Catholic Church.
And versus the Protestant Church.
Oh, we're getting into that too?
Yes, we are.
Oh my gosh, this could take another 2 hours.
No, we're going to keep it down to 20 minutes.
20?
Sure.
Do we need a pope?
No.
All right, that's it, folks.
Let's dig into that a little
why?
bit more than that. So originally the church started with the apostles. Jesus, resurrected, and he came back and spent time with them before ascending back into heaven, and he gave them the mandate to go out and make disciples of all nations. And so they began. That's where the church began, was those original members, those original followers of Jesus. And I believe Mary Magdalene was counted among those original followers. She may not have been an apostle, but she was a part of the disciples. Mm-hmm. And apparently women had a much more prominent role in the early church during the first 300 years, starting with them, the apostles and Mary Magdalene, and going all the way up for the first 300 years. So during that time, they referred to themselves as the Holy Catholic Apostolic Church, because they were. Because Catholic is just it's a word that means universal. Mm-hmm. And Christ told us to make disciples of all nations, to become Catholic, and so to become universal. That's what it meant. And that's what the earliest church identified as.
There's so many Protestants out there
mm-hmm.
that you mentioned the word Catholic, they consider that some type of a religious cult.
Yes.
Or they don't even think of it as a Christian faith.
Yes.
Sometimes.
This is exactly true. I have encountered it.
Yeah.
And that unfortunately in Protestant circles, that stereotypical mindset is very prevalent, and it's very concerning, because they fail to understand the history of their own church. Mm-hmm. Because let's face it, the fact of the matter is that we are one church, we are one body in Christ, and so there are no denominations, there are no different branches. We are just one church. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe we've got differences. Yeah, maybe there have been party poopers who have come along the road here and there who have tried to divide us, and we just need to look past that.
Satan.
Yes, Satan. And that's exactly what it is. He doesn't want us to be unified. He doesn't want us to be Catholic, mm-hmm. and he doesn't want us to be able to communicate with each other.
So what Satan does is he attacks the Catholic Church.
Yes, he does. And Catholic meaning not the Roman Church. Let's differentiate that. The Roman Church is it's the Western Church that came out of the fall of Rome, and then it rebuilt itself back up as what we know of it as today. That's the Roman Church. Mm-hmm. I do not think that it deserves the title of Catholic, because like I just said, every Christian is a Catholic and every Catholic is a Christian.
Because our main objective is to become a universal body of Christ.
Yes.
And that's how we should think of Catholic. Mm-hmm. Now, should we think of it as a lowercase c or an uppercase C, or does that?
That's a good question.
Lowercase c?
That's a good question.
I've often
it's probably lowercase, because you're just universal. Because if you make it uppercase, it's like what we talked about before, where you can have a party that's called Libertarian or mm-hmm. a party that's called Republican, but if your values don't match the identifier of the name, then it's no longer Republican or Libertarian.
Got it. Or, ladies and gentlemen, United States of America, uppercase U, means something completely different than lowercase u. United mm-hmm. States. Mm-hmm. And same with Catholic, it's mm-hmm. more of an adjective or an action
yes.
Verb.
Yes,
and
exactly.
That's how we need to think of those things.
Yes, and that applies to every Christian, no matter what denomination you are. Mm-hmm. People who go to Protestant churches are used to calling the leader of their church a pastor, and that's a valid term, I guess. Personally, I don't like the term pastor because it means shepherd. And mm-hmm. people are always saying that the pastor has his flock and that's supposed to be the church. Right. And so, there are positive arguments for it. But my feeling is the Lord is my shepherd. There is nothing I shall want. So why do I need to call the dude running the church a pastor? You can make an argument. Why do I need to call the dude running the church, father, when you shall call no man on the earth father, just the Lord?
Yeah.
To paraphrase.
How about teacher?
Yeah, teacher, rabbi. Let's go back to rabbi.
That's what we're going to kind of get into to answer that question. Why do we need a pope, and why do we call priest father?
I'm not going to tell people that they can't call their church leader pastor, and I'm not going to say that they can't call their church leader father either, because that's getting into semantics.
Right, it's just a word.
And if you remember in Titus, it says not to argue over little differences,
petty stuff.
Yeah. That's because I believe that they did use the term father in the first 300 years, and if they did, that's great. And that's a tradition from the early church that I think Protestants need to recognize, instead of being like, ew,
right?
It's a Catholic priest,
right.
So let's make pedophile jokes. and by the way, yeah, the Roman Church purposefully hires pedophiles to be priests. That's just how it is. But you see, there's lots of pastors who are pedophiles as well, and use their position of power to get to children.
Yeah, but please do not overgeneralize. These are...
I'm not overgeneralizing. I'm just saying that there are as many pedophile pastors as there are pedophile priests.
Right. Okay.
So just don't judge.
Yeah.
Because, don't try and take the splinter out of my eye when there's a beam in yours.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the first 300 years, the church was getting along just fine. They were suffering different levels of persecution for different periods of time at different points in time throughout that 300 years.
And that's the short story.
Basically, there was some persecution, then there wasn't. Then there was some persecution, and it was even harsher, then there wasn't. There was really big persecution. Like, for instance, Nero would capture Christians and tie them up on the top of posts and cover them in tar and light them on fire and use them as torches for his banquets. Now, that was a pretty harsh persecution, but it didn't last for very long. But Nero was a terrible person.
Yeah, he was crazy.
Yep, and then it got really, really bad. Forgive me, I forget under which emperor it was. I believe it was the emperor right before Constantine. But under that one, they basically said that if you believed that your neighbor was a Christian, as long as you got two people to come forward and say, yeah, we believe that he's a Christian, they would put that neighbor on trial. And then during the trial, to prove whether or not he was a Christian or not, they said, do this pagan ritual, and if they didn't, he was a Christian, and they would kill him. And that was the worst the persecution ever got. And it was really bad, and because while it was enforceable by choice by every district's governor, basically it gave unilateral power to anyone to, oust Christians whenever they wanted, and that was the worst period of the persecution. But it didn't last for that long, because then Constantine happened. And the story is, as an abridged version, is Constantine was at battle, and he was not sure whether he should go and attack the enemy, and because he wasn't sure if it was going to be a decisive win or if it was actually going to hurt him or not. So then, apparently, as the story goes, he saw a fiery cross in the sky. And by the way, Constantine, for context, was let's say he was an incredible fanboy over the Roman sun god Sol Invictus. And so I don't know what caused him to think that this fiery cross in the sky was the Christian God, that it was Jesus Christ giving him a sign to attack his enemies, and that it was a sign from God, the one and only God. He was a pagan, remember?
Right.
I don't understand what made him think that it was the one and only God telling him to go and fight the enemy and that he would win. So he's like, well, you know what? That burning cross up there is, from the one and only God for that the Christians worship, and I think that, if I go and fight my enemy right now, I'm going to win. So let's go do it, boys. And they ran across the bridge, and they beat the enemy, completely thwarted him. And then he's like, you know what? I'm a Christian now. And let's legalize Christianity. And let's ban all the pagan religions and make it only Christianity as the Roman official religion. So this was a good thing because, like I said, that persecution that happened, Diocletian, I believe, under Diocletian, I think that was going to destroy Christians everywhere. And then, for whatever reason, Constantine legalized it. And so that saved a lot of Christians, and it allowed Christianity to flourish and grow. So that was great for the church.
I had no idea that Constantine was a good old Southern boy.
He was.
Good point, Franklin. I was wondering the same thing, and I'm going, wait a minute.
People don't realize it. He hailed from Georgia. I'm sorry.
No, that was good. That was good. We got it. We got it.
But something interesting happened when Constantine legalized Christianity. What had always been the power structure in the Roman government was now in control of the Christian church. You see, every facet of life in Roman life had a governing body over it that then answered to the emperor above it. And so there's one for money, there's one for jobs, there's one for farming, and there was one for religion. Well, so the priesthood, the hierarchy of the pagan religions was always working underneath, the emperor, and they controlled all of the pagan religions of Rome. Now, Constantine had said that all of their pagan religions are banned, and all they have to work with is Christianity. And so this is where you start to see what is going to become the Vatican and the Roman Church. This is where it starts to enter into what we know of it as today, out of what it had been. Today it is still that Roman governing body, but now we see it in 300 some AD, it transforming from the pagan to the Christian. So they became the pagan priesthood became bishops because that's what we had. Okay, they took on our mantles, because now all of their pagan Satanism is illegal. And so they started using our church to basically put makeup on the pig, so to speak. That's why when we know of Easter as the eggs and the bunnies. The bunnies are fertility symbols. The egg was literally worshipped as the Ishtar egg. Ishtar was the ancient goddess of fertility, and there are other permutations of Ishtar throughout different Anglo-Saxon and different cultures, but it's all the same.
Interesting.
And so that's where the term Easter comes from. It was the pagan festival in Rome celebrating Ishtar, or whatever permutation they had, but that's what it is. And that's why the Roman Church used it. Also, the reason why we celebrate Christmas on December 25th is because that was the festival of the Virgin and her virgin-born child. And that goes back to Semiramis and Nimrod and Horus and the Egyptian Horus and Isis and Osiris, and that's what all of that is. And so it's pagan. Mm-hmm. Now, is it a good thing that we took over December 25th and celebrate Christ's birthday? I think that it's a good thing. Does Passover and Resurrection Sunday happen during the Ishtar season? Yes. These things kind of coalesced coincidentally or on purpose, but I think that Christmas is a good thing. Its date is a good thing. And then I think that we just need to stop calling Easter Easter. What the Orthodox Church does is they call the season Pascha. Mm-hmm. Pascha is Latin for Passover, because Christ and his apostles celebrated the Passover before Good Friday. Mm-hmm. And then on Resurrection Sunday, he came back to life. And we need to, instead of saying Easter Sunday, it's Resurrection Sunday. That's what the Orthodox Church calls it.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And so anyway, but
I like that.
I like that too. I think that's the best way of doing it, because that's probably the most accurate to what the apostles and the church did for the first 300 years.
Resurrection Sunday.
Happy Resurrection Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what it is. And so, anyway, those are things that we should correct and observe from history. But so the story goes on from there. So now what we know is the Vatican was slowly trying to, it was trying to exercise its pagan Satanism, into the church. And that's why they converted that pagan basilica in Rome, in the capital city, from being a pantheon of all the gods into being a pantheon of all the saints. One of the critiques of the Catholic Church is that people say that they treat the saints like a pantheon of gods, and that's true, because that's exactly what the Vatican did early on. That doesn't mean that I don't think that, saints aren't important. I think that they are important, and that's something that the Protestants also need to get back into. But anyway, so then time kept moving on, and we eventually get up to, 1000 AD, to 1057, I believe. And that's where we have the Great Schism. And basically, by then, there was a Christian emperor, and the Roman emperor always had the title of Pontifex Maximus, and that goes back into ancient times. It means the greatest bridge builder, meaning that the emperor, or whatever the ruler of said ancient kingdom was, they had a divine right to rule because they had a connection to the gods, meaning Satan and his fallen angels. That's what it actually meant. So this Christian emperor was like, you know what? You know what, guys? And this was a couple emperors after Constantine, but he's like, you know what? It goes against my Christian faith to be called the Pontifex Maximus, so I'm going to abandon that title. That's when the head bishop in the Vatican, or what we know today as the Vatican, the Roman governing body of religion, the head bishop took on the title of Pontifex Maximus, the greatest bridge builder. And that's when the satanic pedophile, cult of the Vatican became what we know of it as today. It became the Pope ruling over from the Vatican over the entire church. And so, the iconoclasm happened over in the Eastern Church, and that's a story for another time. But then the Pope was trying to throw his weight around and say that everyone had to listen to him, that he had the divine right to rule, that his word was infallible. And of course, the Eastern Church, the eastern half of Rome, didn't like that because they still had their groups of bishops who govern every church. Every church in the Orthodox Church has a council of bishops who preside over that one church in that area. And they are the ones who get together and vote on making decisions. The Eastern Church then, and the Orthodox Church now, has somebody called the Patriarch of Rome, who is kind of like the Pope, but he's just a bishop. And what he does is he migrates from one church to another, to another, to another on a pilgrimage, and he sits on the council of each church. He's only worth one vote, though. He's not the kiss my toe and kiss the ring, what I say goes. He's just another bishop on that council for that meeting that he's there for. And so the Orthodox Church does not have anything even close to the Pope, because the Pope is the Pontifex Maximus, the satanic ruler. And but anyway, what's ironic is that at this point in time, when the Pope was trying to tell the Eastern Church what to do, and the schism in the church happened, right after that, all of these Germanic tribes came in and invaded Western Rome, and they defeated Western Rome, and it fell.
Yeah.
And so, and out of the ashes of that, the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church, as we know it today, rose out of. But on the Eastern side, they were treating it just like it was another day. Because they were patriotic. If you went back in time and asked them who they were, they would have said, we're Romans. That's our country, and this is our church. And they weren't concerned with what had happened over there, especially because of what the Pope was doing. And so we know it today as the Byzantine Empire, but they were very much Roman in their patriotism. And their values were very much Christian, not pagan.
Right.
And so the Byzantine Empire went this way, and Western Rome went this way in history. And a lot of the stuff that people lob as criticisms against Christianity came out of what the Vatican and the Pope did over here. But meanwhile, the Orthodox Church, as it came to be known, out of the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Church, it just kind of minded its own business. It kept all the good things, and it kept all of the bad things from the original tradition. One bad thing is, the only bad thing that I know of, to be honest, is that they still use the Julian calendar.
Oh, yeah.
So their dates are slowly drifting more and more and more every single year. The Western world fixed the calendar with the Gregorian calendar, and that was because it happened under Pope Gregory the 13th. Now, regardless of if it was actually Pope Gregory who saw the flaw in the calendar, if he was the one who fixed it, and whether or not he was a genuine Christian who came to occupy the Pope's seat or not, it doesn't matter. There was a legitimate problem with the way that we count the dates versus how nature is, and they fixed it. So I'd say to the Orthodox Church as a criticism, to fix, as a critique more so, is to adopt the Gregorian calendar, not because it was the Pope that did it, but because these are the dates where we observe our traditions. It's
a legitimate scientific thing that needs to be fixed.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it's right.
Yes, because it's right.
Yeah.
But other than that, everything else they do is to the original traditions in the Orthodox Church. And so Protestants have a lot of problems with the Catholic Church because they feel like they might have strayed away from the original traditions or what have you. And I think that to Catholics and to Protestants, look to the Orthodox Church. Mm-hmm. Look to the Orthodox Church for confirmation on what is more correct.
I find it interesting that the rogue entities always get the most recognition, and they're the ones that are remembered throughout history. Mm-hmm. It's never the right way.
Yeah, it's never the right way, the Orthodox way.
That's why they're not remembered. They don't make enough waves.
Yep.
They're there for the right reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
But they have made all the right waves. You see, it was Christian missionaries from the Orthodox Church who traveled upward into Russia and those areas, and they created an alphabet for the Slavic languages up there. They didn't have a written alphabet. That written alphabet is now the one used in Russia. And the church in Russia is the Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
It was the Orthodox Church which helped all of those countries and cultures develop, which is why those countries, now that the Soviets are gone, those countries are returning to being Christian nations because that's where they originated. Mm-hmm. So Putin's not that bad of a guy because he's trying to bring back the Orthodox Church. Before we started the podcast, you had a question, and I hope that we haven't elapsed what your question was.
Actually, I think I found my answer.
Okay.
Just to simplify everything that you've been saying.
Okay.
Like to really simplify it. Sounds to me like the Orthodox Church is like the true Christian church.
Yes, it is.
And the Western Roman Church is basically the one that evolved out of all the satanic stuff.
Yes. That does not mean that Christians who are part of the Catholic Church are part of the satanic cult.
Right.
They are still just as Christian as Orthodox and Protestants. They and there's tons of traditions in the Catholic Church that are probably exactly the same as the Orthodox Church, like, observing the sacraments. That's very important. And, all of these other things, those are very, very important traditions that I don't think Protestants really care about. And that's a problem. The sacraments are things that you do to be closer to Christ. That's why when you get baptized, you're closer to Christ. You take communion, you're closer to Christ.
That's why you cannot be a Catholic. In other words, a Christian who wants a universal Christian body, who wants to be part of that universal church.
In the original sense of the word.
You cannot approve abortion.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You can't. And be a Catholic.
And there's a Catholic priest who said that he told his congregation that if there are any pro-abortion people here, get out of my church.
Yeah.
And so he's actually pretty brave. He's a Catholic priest who is telling people in his church to get the heck out if they're abortionists.
Yeah. So you basically have distinguished the differences between the Orthodox Church and how the Roman Catholic Church came about. And basically, there was a distance between the Byzantine Church and the Western Church during that split.
Yes.
Of course, they were because of distance, they were isolated. So what was happening over here
didn't affect them.
Didn't really, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that was actually a saving grace.
Yes.
For the Orthodox Church.
And God always preserves. And
the way God always works is that, He's not out to make a big name for His people, boasting. There shouldn't be any boasting or anything like that. They just went along and didn't get so involved with the world.
Yes, exactly.
And this Roman Catholic Church is actually, they made transitions from the pagan ways and just correlated those things
with Christian
values. And when I taught school, we had families that didn't get into the whole Easter thing. They called it what it was.
Right.
And you called it again
Resurrection Sunday.
Resurrection Sunday.
And in the Orthodox Church, the season is called Pascha, which means Passover. Okay. That's exactly what it is.
And that correlates with the actual Passover.
And what's interesting is the pastor, who's probably the viewers might have heard of him, Artur Pawlowski, in the original video that was put out of him kicking those police officers out of his church.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah, he was saying that, how dare you come into my church during the Passover? And so he's a pastor, therefore he's technically Protestant, but he was referring to it as what it is during the Passover, because they were celebrating Resurrection Sunday.
Yeah, interesting.
Very
interesting.
But you see, I believe he immigrated from an Orthodox country. I think he was from Poland. So there's that heritage coming in.
Right.
He had experience with the Orthodox Church. He knew what to call things. So even though he's a Canadian pastor, he had connections to the Orthodox Church.
Yeah, he had knowledge of it, experience.
And that's mad respect for him.
In order to make it a true Catholic Church, lowercase c, is the Protestants and the Roman Catholics need to adopt some of this Orthodox practice or
ideals,
because it is the closest lineage to the apostles and hasn't changed that much.
Yep, exactly.
They weren't tainted by what was going on
in the world
at that time.
Yeah,
where there was that big split.
Yeah. So all these people concerned about whether or not what they're doing is correct or not, I think that they just need to look into the Orthodox Church and see what they do.
Wow. Okay, I'm 60 years old, and I'm just now realizing that the Orthodox Church is probably the one true church that we should be focusing on.
Yes, I agree.
Simply because it is the closest, historically, the closest lineage to the apostles without the interference of the Western Roman Empire.
Yes.
And what occurred.
And all the paganism.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
All right.
I'm ready to do this.
Yeah, I think we handled that pretty quickly. Any questions?
Yes. I just want to interject something real quick. Something you said a while back about how the saints are important, and Protestants need to realize that. I just want to be very clear. That does not mean you worship the saints.
Oh no. No.
And I think that's something that a lot of Protestants, a grievance that a lot of Protestants have with the Catholic Church, is that it's like a lot of times it seems like these Catholics like pray to and worship the saints,
right?
Like as if they're gods themselves, and that goes back to what you said about the paganism and the Roman
pantheon,
the pantheon, how they basically treat them like the pagan gods.
Yeah, exactly. And we must make it
and basically dress them up like saints, like putting the lipstick on a pig, like you said.
Yes, exactly.
Coloring them up to be in alignment with
Christian faith.
Christian faith.
Yeah.
But it's basically that same ancient Babylonian death cult. They're worshiping all of these illegitimate gods.
Yeah.
And coloring it up as paying homage to the saints or whatever.
Right. I think that the correct way of doing it is you're not praying to the saints, but what you're doing.
But just honor them like we honor our founding fathers.
Exactly,
You know?
just like that.
Yeah.
And the reason why these people are saints is because God helped them to accomplish something that we recognize those saints by. So like Saint Anthony, he's the patron saint of finding lost things.
Give credit where credit is due.
Give credit where credit is due. We know that Saint Anthony is the patron saint of finding lost things, and therefore we know that God is the one who helped him find the things that were lost. Or Saint Nicholas, the real historical Saint Nicholas, he is the patron saint of children and giving gifts. Because
without getting credit.
Yeah, without getting credit, because the original real Saint Nicholas, he was the story is that there were 3 daughters of a man, and they could not, and the father could not pay the dowry for his 3 daughters to be married. So instead of going publicly and giving this man the money to do so, what he did is one night he went to the house in the middle of the night and threw a sack of gold through the window. And so he immediately paid the dowry for the oldest. Another night he came back, threw gold in, another marriage. Came in the 3rd night, well, the father was waiting for him this time and caught him. And he profusely thanked him for what he was doing, but St. Nicholas said, "Don't tell anyone."
Don't worry, there's enough gold in there to pay for your broken window, too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Is that what really happened?
That is, yeah, that, you see, St. Nicholas said, "Build a chimney."
Now I don't have to break your windows next time.
Exactly. And that is how the tradition of Santa Claus started.
Yeah.
You see, Santa Claus, the way we understand St. Nicholas today has kind of been fused with some of the pagan Alpine legends. But you see, the original intent of St. Nicholas, of that giving, is still there. And people say that Santa Claus is, it's an anagram for Satan, Santa. And like, yeah, okay.
Santa is Spanish for saint.
Exactly what I was gonna say.
There you go.
It's just it's Santa Claus, because over time the name went through different permutations throughout different languages. He's Saint Nicholas. He gives gifts to people without asking for anything in return, because that's what Christ did. That's why Saint Nicholas was associated with Christmas on December 25th in the wintertime. Now, yes, that did. Some of the pagan stuff did bleed in because of the cultures that became Christian, but they still had their old pagan, things, their legends and stuff. So it did bleed in, but Saint Nicholas is not evil. Santa Claus is not evil, and therefore Santa Claus is a legitimate part of Christmas and the message of Jesus Christ giving himself up for our sins. But we shouldn't, buy Coca-Cola and let St. Nicholas be some sort of poster child for corporations and for the turning Christmas into a materialistic, festival, which is what originally it was. Yeah. Yes, on December 25th in the Roman Empire, before Christianity was legalized, yes, on December 25th, they would give each other materialistic gifts. That is true. There is overlap in our Christian tradition and the pagan one, just like there always seems to be. But ours is because of Christ and that spirit of Christ that Saint Nicholas exhibited.
Right. Okay. So basically we've covered some other territory there, but talking about the saints, the Catholic Church in reality just gives respect to those who made the sacrifices.
Yes.
Many of them were martyred.
I think all of them were actually, at least the vast majority.
The vast majority of them are martyred.
So they went above and beyond the call of duty, and those are things that we should respect.
Yes.
And they also did good works.
Yes, they did. And through God.
Yeah. And which brings me to Mary.
Yes.
And the Catholic Church.
Yes, you mean, the mother of Christ.
The mother of Christ.
Yes.
The human mother of Christ.
Yes.
Okay, the Orthodox, how does the Orthodox Church, well, I know how the Roman Catholic Church basically just like the saints.
Idolizes her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they really don't idolize her, but I mean
they do actually
give respect to her.
Well, that's in reality that's what Christians in the Catholic Church do. But the Pope and the satanic cult in the Vatican,
explain that.
What they do with Mary is they do call her a co-redeemtrix, meaning that she is a co-redeemer with Christ. That's not true.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one before.
Well, that's what they say, that she is the Queen of Heaven. And
basically, they treat her like the pagans did with what'd you call her, Horus?
Ishtar.
Ishtar
and Isis.
It's like that virgin theme.
Yep, that virgin theme. And in fact, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Ishtar is the virgin queen of heaven. And so
but that's on the Roman Catholic side, not the
Orthodox.
Not the Orthodox.
I don't know, but I do not think so. But that's a point of research that we must do. We have to see where the Orthodox Church stands on Mary. But the truth of the matter is, regardless of what the Orthodox Church's view is, the reality is that the Roman Church used Mary as once again, lipstick on the pig, as a Christian veneer over Ishtar, the Queen of Heaven, the Virgin, Semiramis, Isis, and that's why they worship her so much. And so you need to, and the Rosary. The Rosary has so many Hail Marys in it.
Right.
Well, originally it wasn't that way. The Rosary was actually just a series of Our Fathers. And remember, the Our Father was given to us by Christ himself. Therefore, the Our Father is one of the most important prayers that we have. And so the Rosary was just a series of Our Fathers. But then they wanted to make Mary more important to the Christians, and so they painted Ishtar up as Mary, and then they created the Hail Mary, and they made the Rosary associated with Mary. And you see, it creates a whole snowball effect where now people have Mary statues in their yard, and and I'm not putting anybody down for that, but you see,
because that could still be looked at as just an honoring sort of thing.
Yes, too. Exactly.
I think the congregation, the Christians in that practice in the Catholic Church, I'm going to use uppercase C, just to make a point.
Yes.
When I talk to my mother, who is a devout Catholic, who hates the Vatican.
Good. That's how they all should be.
She's like totally upset with everything that's going on over there, but she doesn't see Mary as a queen,
right,
or anything like that. She just gives her high regard and high respect,
and that's
because
right.
the part she played.
If you think about it, if you look in the Bible and you see everything that Mary went through, giving birth to Christ and being pregnant with Christ, she went through hell.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like all the other saints did.
Yep.
So
and she is a saint.
Yeah.
Saint Mary and Saint Joseph, they are among the most important saints
for bringing Christ into the world.
And a saint is just someone who believes in Christ.
Yes,
we are all saints.
We are all saints. And Christ gives us all equal authority in the church. By the way, that's something I wanted to say in the beginning.
So really, there is no church hierarchy.
There is no church hierarchy. That's why the Orthodox Church having a council of bishops who votes on making decisions is a good thing.
It's like a republic.
It's like a republic. Exactly.
Representative.
Yeah, exactly. It is like a representative because all the bishops are elected from the body of the church in the Orthodox Church. Each bishop is elected to be in that role, and then they vote on making decisions. So what's ironic is that the American system is very similar to the Orthodox system.
Yes, it is. Notice that.
Women had a very prominent role in the church for the first 300 years. And like Mary Magdalene and other women who became disciples and joined the churches that the apostles started. It was when Rome entered the picture that it started to phase women out of positions of power. It was because of the pagan satanic cult taking control of the Christian church that women were first forced out of roles in the church to begin with.
I'm glad you brought that up, by the way, because I didn't know the reason behind that. I just thought it was
it's not because we're all sexist.
Well, in the first Christian church, there it is. It's biblical.
Right.
And that's what we're going to follow. Well, women didn't have a lot of rights in biblical history.
And that's because that was biblical history. That was in history. That was just across the board. Mm-hmm. But women were important in the early church, more so than what you would believe.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, just Jesus never spoke down to women. He never did.
Nope.
And so that's a very progressive man there.
Progressive? No. Don't tell me. He wasn't liberal.
Oh, no. Well, in the original sense.
In the original sense.
He wanted everyone to have liberty.
Yes, liberty.
And
but he wasn't
equal
leftist.
Status.
So are there or are there not passages in the Bible where that's saying women should not have these rules?
Well, that was Rome, and Saul, who became Paul. Mm-hmm. He was from that heritage. Mm-hmm. He was a Roman citizen, mm-hmm. and I felt like his writings really, especially in the beginning, really put women in a different place. Would you agree with that or disagree with that?
I agree with it because I've read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. Mm-hmm. I remember reading a lot of the stuff that he wrote, and my grandpa feels the same way. And he's like, I really don't agree with a lot of the stuff that Paul wrote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he was a very traditional man. I mean, he was a man, exactly. And in those days, women didn't have the same status in Rome mm-hmm. that the men had.
I'm not going to defend Saul Paul, but the reason why I'm not in the real oppressors of women are the satanic cults and Islam and stuff like that.
Right.
And those need to be done away with. But when it comes to Paul, when he was applying it to his newly attained Christian faith, I think, like I said, I'm not defending him because if he's wrong on something, because I would need to read all of his writings right here and say, this is right and this is wrong and this is right and this is wrong. But I think that traditional foundation that you're talking about, while it was influenced by him being a Roman citizen, I think it was just him wanting to have men, to be protectors, to watch over their wife and their children, and for the women to be the nurturers and to take care of the children and to be there to help the man.
Which is the natural.
It's the natural
tendency. I mean, it is the woman who actually has the power of bringing life into this world, and therefore continue that nurturing physically and mentally.
And that's why women are sacred, and that's why women are targeted. And so I think, regardless of how right or wrong Paul was, I believe that the sentiment that he was coming from was actually one wanting to protect women.
Turn boys into men.
Turn boys into men. Yeah, exactly. To turn boys into men. And so, yeah, it would have to be on a case-by-case basis. Mm-hmm. But there's one part, and it might have been written by Paul, but in the Bible, it was, this was brought to my attention because it was talking about, somebody said that they didn't like this one passage where it said that it basically implied that men were over the women and that women can't come to Christ themselves. They have to come through Christ through their husband. But that's not what that passage is saying.
Right.
What that passage is saying is that as God is equal with Christ, so is the husband equal with the wife. That's what it means if you read that passage.
Very carefully.
Yeah, very carefully.
Yeah, people don't read these things very carefully
anymore. And newer translations botch a lot of the original intention. And that's why I don't like newer translations. But anyway, regardless, that's another topic. Basically, I believe that if you look into the Bible, it's not going to put women down. Mm-hmm. And in the original teachings within the first 300 years, I think that they were trying to protect women and protect the family unit. And in fact, the Bible talks about how it's the father's responsibility to be the spiritual teacher mm-hmm. in the family, and the wife has to support the husband. You see, it's not saying that he's the king, he's the patriarch, that they have to listen to him and he's got an iron fist. No, he has the responsibility to teach about God and to read from the Bible. And it's the wife's responsibility to help him. Mm-hmm. So, the husband needs to step up and be the spiritual teacher so that the wife can help him and back him up.
Honey, I'm really confused about this. I need some.
Yeah, exactly, because it's his responsibility to be the teacher on that subject, but she probably knows it better than he does.
Honey, what's this word? What's this word?
That's crucifixion.
So really, one should not interpret the Bible from a modern perspective.
Oh, I was actually just going to say something about that. You got to understand the context.
Yes.
They always
the
do
culture.
that.
The
People
culture.
always want to do that, don't they?
Yep.
Men have a responsibility, a role. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean they're in charge.
Nope.
And women have a role,
A responsibility.
to be a supporter as a team member.
Team member.
And together they perform these duties.
Yes. Because remember, equally, because in the Bible it teaches that a husband and a wife are equal. They are one. You see,
One flesh.
They are one flesh. Because marriage, the sacrament of marriage is the dissolution of the dual and the coming together as the one. And marriage, the sacrament of marriage is, the covenant that a man and a woman take in front of God. That's basically the physical manifestation of God in the third dimension. Because you've got the husband and the wife, and then you have the child, which is the third part of the Trinity. And so, but they're all one, you see. And I'm not saying that God has a female aspect, and that's another topic, and that's a really bad thing that I've actually found cropping up in Protestant churches, saying that the Holy Spirit is the female aspect of God, and that's a dangerous notion, to say the least. Getting back to the sacrament of marriage, it's the dissolution of the duality, and it's the coming together as one in solidarity, just as God is triune but one. So the Father, the Mother, and the children are triune but one. And that's why family is so important and why the globalists are attacking the family unit so much. Because the family unit is the time-tested, age-old, and most effective tool against brainwashing. It's the most effective tool against all of their divisive tactics, and it's the most effective tool in building strong communities and a strong society. That's why the family is under attack.
Yep. That's why the church has been under attack for centuries.
For centuries. It's never stopped. Even after Constantine legalized Christianity, it was still being attacked from within.
Yeah.
By the Pope, by the satanic death cult that resided within the Vatican.
Yeah.
The governmental body of Rome.
Yeah. Talks like this are really going to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
people understand to keep that division from happening. This is your armor.
Yes.
This is putting on your armor.
Putting on the armor of God.
It's an info war.
It's an info war. And isn't that what Christianity has always been? It's an info war.
Pretty much.
The Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, people had to smuggle those things around. And if you started talking to your neighbor like, hey, have you read this really cool thing called Matthew? It's like, oh my gosh, that's Alex Jones level crazy.
That's right. It's a good analogy.
It's like a what am I trying to? What's the word I'm trying to think of? Basically, it's like if you're giving people or selling or giving people Bibles, but it's like you're a drug dealer or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was.
Underground.
Yeah, underground. Yeah. They had to hand copy Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and they had to smuggle them around.
Gee whiz.
And people still smuggle Bibles in Islamic countries and in China.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the persecution it's still present, and it's getting worse now.
Yeah, it's here now. It's here. We didn't think it'd ever be here in America, but we've got it. And we saw it coming. Alex Jones saw it coming.
Yes, he did. Infowars.com. Tomorrow's news today.
Okay, Alex, you owe these guys. But one last question. How do we get rid of the Pope?
How brutal do you want to be here?
Well, I don't know.
I think the answer is simple. We ignore him.
That's the answer I was thinking too.
Because he has no power over the Catholic Church. The Pope never has.
Only as much power as you give him.
Yeah, only as much power as you give him.
Same with the government.
I think that we still need a reformation, but you see, not a Protestant reformation, and not necessarily a Catholic reformation, but I think we need a Orthodox reformation and bring those original traditions back.
And when in doubt, faith in Jesus Christ is all that matters.
That's all that matters.
Right.
We don't care about denominations, and we don't care about non-denominations. People seem to get really elitist over their denomination or their non-denomination.
And I think that's how Satan uses the church to fight his wars too.
Yep.
I mean, you know what Jesus said to the guy who was being crucified on his left when he said, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He said, "I tell you the truth, today you will be with me in paradise." He didn't belong to any denomination.
Nope.
Right.
He wasn't, I mean, he was sitting there dying on a cross. He wasn't practicing any religious rituals or anything.
Nope.
All it was a very small declaration of faith that saved him.
Yes, exactly.
And Jesus would always tell people after he healed him, he would say, "Your faith has healed you."
Yes.
Right.
He didn't even take credit for healing people. He said, "Your faith has healed you."
Yeah.
From your afflictions.
Yeah, exactly.
So belief and faith in Jesus Christ is really all that matters whenever you're in doubt.
Yep, and if you believe in Christ, that makes you a Catholic.
I'm a Catholic.
Yeah, I'm a Catholic. And you're a Catholic.
I'm a Catholic and I am proud.
And I am proud. That's what it is. That was the original apostolic meaning
With a lowercase c though.
with a lowercase c, because I'm not Protestant, capital P. I'm not Catholic, capital C, and I guess I'm technically not Orthodox, capital O, but right. I am a Christian. Period.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Right.
What it really matters is being a follower of Christ.
Yeah,
that's really all that matters. A Christian.
A Christian with a capital C.
There you go.
With a capital C. But I'm not non-denominational.
Okay, now wait a minute. I'm confused.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
No. Let's dig into this.
No, I got you. I got you. Well, okay, let's wrap it up then.
Okay, well then how about we do a little plug then to end it off?
Let's do it.
Okay, so Molon Labe Truth is doing an event here in Garnett, Kansas at the First Christian Church on South Walnut Street, on the corner of South Walnut Street and 2nd Street. And we're going to be having a video presentation, and we are going to be serving free sandwiches and free beverages. So if you're interested in our information and what we have to present, please, if you're in the area, come visit us on Saturday, June 26th at 5:30 p.m. for a 2-hour-long presentation. And
what, again, was that presentation going to touch on?
We're just briefly to touch on the topics. We're going to be talking about, the Christian persecution that we are seeing in the world now, with an update from Pastor Artur Pawlowski. We're going to be hearing a presentation from Dr. Lee Merritt on how face masks don't work and are actually detrimental. And we're going to be hearing a presentation from Dr. Sherry Tenpenny on the science behind the new COVID-19 inoculations and how they actually work and how they are not, by definition, a vaccine.
Right. Now, by now, this should be old news, but they're still pushing this agenda. Mm-hmm. So it's not over.
Nope.
They're going to come back with a vengeance.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And they're already, public parks where they have symphonic orchestras that have played there for 100 years, free to the public. They're saying that you can't enter unless you're vaccinated.
Yeah. Well,
it's happening.
On college campuses, if you happen to be one of the 3 or 4 students who refuse to get the experimental injection, mm-hmm. they're going to make you wear a mask, mm-hmm. while everyone else who's taken both shots gets to run around and have access to the entire campus.
Mm-hmm.
As if not wearing a mask is going to hurt someone with a vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
If the vaccine works, then then why are people afraid of people who aren't wearing masks and who aren't vaccinated?
Yeah, if your vaccine works, why do I need one? And if your vaccine doesn't work, then why do I need one?
Exactly.
Right.
And in India, they're forcing unvaccinated people to wear skull and crossbone patches.
Great.
Oh, where does that sound familiar from in history?
Didn't the Jews get a golden star slapped on them?
It's almost like these people are all over the world throughout all time.
Wow.
Having the same ideas.
Oh.
Okay. I tell you what, we're going to save this for next
time.
The date is the 26th of June.
Saturday 26th.
Saturday.
At 5:30 p.m.
Free sandwiches and drinks.
Free. And no admission fee, nothing. This is a completely free presentation with free food, and we at Molon Labe Truth hope to see you there.
Yeah, please come.
Please come.
You know, this is coming at a cost to these guys, and they just want to get that information out there.
We want you to understand what they are trying to force upon you and upon society.
We will have a donation jar, though.
Yeah, we'll have a donation jar if you feel charitable enough, but we're not going to ask you to pay us anything because this information is for you.
Okay, this is Verity Seeker signing off. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Hey,
thank you.
Molon Labe Truth is happy to be here.
Oh, by the way, Franklin, Wesley.
And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Amen.
Amen.
Santa Claus.
St. Nicholas. Santa Claus.